living with the seasons, finding beauty in every moment, and practicing acceptance. If these are themes, challenges, or experiences in your life, this episode is especially for you. Please stay a while and enjoy the journey. Hello, and welcome to Inner Bloom Meditations, a podcast for all the things that help us reflect, understand, love, and grow. An audio space to relax, center, and ground. A place to bloom into your highest self. I'm your host, Richard DeLuna, and of all the things that have helped me in my own growth and grounding, poetry is certainly among the highest of them. And while we've been focusing our journey so far on the works of Khalil Gibran, the Lebanese-American poet, author, and artist, today I think I'd like to make a quick detour. I'd like to explore another beautiful writer, another wonderful creator by the name of Jane Hirschfield, who wrote a poem called Lake and Maple that, ever since my first reading, has truly never left me. The themes in this poem of acceptance and release have resonated with me so deeply since that first encounter, and I'm excited to share it with you here and explore something new today. So, without further ado, let's dive into the beauty and wonder of Jane Hirschfield's poem, Lake and Maple. I want to give myself utterly as this maple that burned and burned for 3 days without stinting, and then in 2 more dropped off every leaf, as this lake that no matter what comes to its green-blue depths, both takes and returns it. In the still heart that refuses nothing, the world is twice born, 2 earths wheeling, 2 heavens, 2 egrets reaching down into subtraction. Even the fish, for an instant, doubled before it is gone. I want the fish. I want the losing it all when it rains, and I want the returning transparence. I want the place by the edge flowers where the shallow sand is deceptive, where whatever steps in must plunge, and I want the ones who come in secret to drink only in early darkness, and I want the ones who are swallowed. I want the way the water sees without eyes, hears without ears, shivers without will or fear at the gentlest touch. I want the way it accepts the cold moonlight and lets it pass, the way it lets all of it pass without judgment or comment. There is a lake, Lala Dead sang, no larger than 1 seed of mustard that all things return to. O heart, if you will not, cannot give me the lake, then give me the song. Now that we've shared in the beauty, wisdom, awe, and dare I say majesty of that poem, I invite you to take a little time gathering your thoughts on it, reflecting, or even journaling what might have come up for you. I'll give you some time to do so if you wish. Feel free to pause if you want or need, and then we'll begin to explore these words and their beauty and depth together. So, for this week's episode, we're going to, or I guess I should say, we already have, taken a bit of a divergence. So far, I think all of our episodes have been more or less centered on the work of Khalil Gibran. As I've said before, potentially the most influential poet for me, maybe even the most influential writer. And I absolutely intend to return to the exploration of the prophet. Um, but there was a certain series of events this last week that's led me to, I don't know, I guess that just led me to want to read this poem. To those of you who are returning listeners, you know that it's been a couple, maybe even a few weeks since our last episode. And I had recorded one for you, and it started on a second. But I'm not, don't let me say I'm not good at computers, but I am currently learning them. It is not historically a strong suit of mine. But of all that I recorded and edited, I corrupted those files somehow in trying to transfer them. And it didn't feel um it didn't feel like following my bliss in a sense to repeat the same episode in recording it 2 weeks in a row. But I want to be sure that when we return to the prophet, that it's more or less where we left off in the poem on giving. Again, there's so much to offer there and so much to explore, and I'm really excited to get back to it. Something that's really funny is that the direction that the poem's interpretation took last week or a couple weeks ago was on the idea of structure and the freedom that we experience within structure. That structure does not have to be just viewed or experienced as a limit or a limitation or constraint, but that can also be the framework that allows us to expand and experience these elements of confidence and certainty and growth as well. And maybe it's a blessing that um, I'm going to have to re-record that if that is what I want to re-explore with you again, because something I've thought about is it'd be really nice to interject astrologically the relationship between Jupiter and Saturn in explaining how boundaries give rise to expansion, actually. So, maybe that was one of the blessings wrapped up in that. And something that cracks me up is that episode was on structure and on being consistent, and life quickly handed me a lesson on yeah, kind of some of the things I talked about when things are quote unquote derailed, and how we find our way back to the path. So this nice derailing, if you will, led to this new desire to read this poem with you instead. Jane Hirschfield, spelled Jane in the classic sense, Hirschfield, Hirschfield. S.C.H. Field, is a really wonderful poet as well. I believe still with us and still writing, who writes quite a bit around seasons and the flow of seasons and the transition of time and how to find beauty and acceptance in that transitioning and in that flow of time, which felt really adequate, I think. And really, I guess what really brought it to mind was that, in part due to recording a episode on structure and talking about being more consistent, what we speak and what we hear and what we spend time with is to, in some sense, what we become, at least in this iteration. So I started over these last couple of weeks becoming a lot more consistent with my morning routines and being sure that I go outside to do morning breath work and yoga before running. And today, when I went outside, it had been raining before I woke up. So when I threw my mat down outside and laid down, there were a lot of snails around me. Not like a ton, but 5 or 6. And as I looked around, I was like, oh, they're kind of, yeah, they're crawling on the window over there, and they're on the blades of grass. And I I felt this deep joy of what a beautiful environment it was for them to come out and be themselves, of knowing that snails, due to their just anatomy, right, have this necessity of a moist environment, right? They need to, they can only kind of come out and navigate the world when it is more nurturing to them. And that led to the thought of some of the things we've already discussed and explored a little bit. But yeah, talking about those things that nourish us, which I think I've mentioned in episode 0 or episode 1, which, mind you, I'm not sending you to episode 0. That was my first time ever recording, and it could be worth a while, but you can just stick with the journey with us here where we're at. So, talking about those things that nourish us, and in the previous episode on trees, talking about living with our seasons and giving and receiving in turn with the natural flow of the world and of life around us. So the snails coming out after rain felt like a really beautiful example of that, something I don't get to see so often when I throw my mat down. I don't usually see them moving around me. And in not wanting to re-record last week's or the other week's episode, that also felt to a degree like living with my own season. A season can be very large in the sense of a lifetime, or in the technical sense of the 4 seasons that we experience here in the US, or 3 seasons that are experienced elsewhere, or however many one may divide the year into. It could be the course of a job, it could be the course of an education, a month, a week, a day, an experience with another person, an emotional unfolding, a conversation, all the way down to a breath in and a breath out, right? Here's the season of spring, and then our autumn, right? And if we practice square breathing, or any breathing that has us hold our breath, there is your winter and your summer existing with a little more stasis in between those. So, yeah, and in thinking about that, both within myself, having the season of not wanting to repeat my last season immediately, of recording those same themes, and of seeing these snails around me, it felt really beautiful to move into talking about seasons and talking about acceptance. And so Jane Hirschfield's poem felt like something really beautiful and wonderful to move into. The way that she, let me pull it up and look at a few of these lines with you. Okay, here we go. So the very first lines, she says, "I want to give myself utterly as this maple that burned and burned for 3 days without stinting, and then in two more dropped off every leaf." So we're already positioned here within a season. We know that this is the season of autumn, which is the season of release, of letting go. Um, it's the season of, it's one of the two seasons of transition, of major transition. And she wants to exist beautifully within that, letting the leaves go, not resisting, right? And then she also says that she wants to be as the lake, which, no matter what, comes to its blue-green depths, both takes and returns it. Now, she speaks of that existing within herself or within any of us. In the still heart that refuses nothing, the world is twice born. Two earths wheeling, two heavens, two egrets reaching down into subtraction. So I think that I don't want to ascribe that particular part an absolute definition. So I would love for that to be whatever it might be for you. I would love for that to be a phrase, an idea, a feeling within you that is very much your own, but it has a lot of possibilities, right? And so to offer one of those is maybe that there is this world that exists around us and that we exist within. I think that's maybe a more holistic way of saying it. There's this world that we exist in and as a part of, right? We are this world. This world is us. And we experience that world through the five senses. A phrase that I hear sometimes that I like a lot is the five sense reality. So that's us as humans and other beings who have five senses through which to experience the world. And through those five senses, we have interpretations of things, right? Our vision is not the same as an insect who may be able to see ultraviolet light or something. Our hearing is not the same as a bat that can determine the shapes of things from the sounds of them. And so there is room for there to be disparity between the world around us and the way we interpret that in the world within us. So she speaks of this place where the world is twice born. To some degree, that is kind of always true. But if that surface that she mentions later, right? I believe when she mentions the moon, in reflecting it or accepting it, letting it pass, the transparency of it after the rain, she, in mentioning that world, that reflection could be so muddled that we would not recognize what is in that reflection. It's too distorted. And that can happen as the world that we sense around us enters the world that we sense within us, which again is kind of all the same world. And so the one interpretation that we can, or at least one of the interpretations that we can pull there, is how creating the stillness and acceptance within us allows this world in its fullness, its truth, and its beauty to recreate itself inside of us once again. This feels like a bit of an abstract thought, but I'm going to share it anyways. Okay, what movie was it? I believe it was the movie Soul, a more recent animated film that I actually haven't seen, but I saw a clip from where a man was like, he said, I think he had just made a major accomplishment, and he was talking with somebody afterwards who was also part of that accomplishment, performing maybe performing music in a large venue or something to that effect. And he said, I just thought it would feel different. And he seems unsatisfied. And the woman says to him, let me tell you a story. One time a fish met another fish and said to it, hey, could you tell me or point me towards the ocean? And the fish says, the ocean? He says, yes, the ocean. I want to go there. I want to experience its greatness. And the fish responds and says, this is the ocean. You're in the ocean. And then the first fish says, no, this isn't the ocean. This is just water. I want the ocean. And so it reminds me of there's a, and I tend to do this, tangent upon tangent. This is kind of how my mind works, but I love attaching these different points of the web, of the spider's web, of a thought, a feeling, an experience, and then creating that center from those pieces that we can attach to. Thank you to the spider for being a beautiful teacher in that way, in teaching us how to create webs and then weave those things together, right? Like putting them on the loom and weaving a beautiful tapestry. So another piece that I'll add to this tapestry is there is a visual artist on Instagram who is, I believe their handle is Brichida, Britchida, who makes really wonderful visual pieces, I believe mostly with watercolor. And one of them, they have, I wish I had it in front of me, but they have these two circles of different colors that say something along the lines of, you know, incredibly enjoyable experience, and then another one that says my ability to enjoy it. And I believe they both kind of grow. They're separate, and then they keep growing and getting closer across the piece, and then they like overlap in their fullness. And it's kind of this reminder that we can have these things within our lives that could unlock so much beauty and love and life and joy. But our eyes could be closed to them. We could not know how to experience them and receive that joy and that beauty. I think an experience that a lot of people over the age of 21 here or 18 elsewhere may understand that as could be the enjoyment of alcoholic beverages to those who drink. So learning how to appreciate the notes in wine or coffee as well, or beer. Nobody starts out liking an IPA, but after, experiencing ales and lagers and gaining appreciation for the palate, the part of the palate that enjoys bitterness, we can move into other things. I think a more holistic example could be dark chocolate, actually. But I think generally speaking, we wouldn't start off appreciating those, but can learn to more and more. So yeah, we learn how to enjoy these things, which in a sense is a way of relearning how to enjoy things. We look at children, right, in their youth, and see their ability to laugh and to experience playfulness and beauty and bounty at the smallest of things. So it's like being in the Garden of Eden, where all things are beautiful, and there's almost this desire to return to the Garden of Eden, which, if we look at that as a metaphor, is that beauty, bounty, safety, and unfolding of our youth time. So I do feel as though I've transitioned a bit away from the flow of seasons, but bringing that back in, in cultivating a stillness within ourselves, we can then be as the child who simply experiences things in this one-to-one format without applying the mental filter of Is it okay if I enjoy this? Am I going to be judged this way or that way by society? Or whatever that fear might be that's preventing us from doing something, like dancing. I think dancing is a great example, right? It feels good to do, but we can get caught in our thoughts and not want to do it in front of others. Speaking, the same. A lot of things that we would perceive in a social element, which is to say that we were socialized to think certain ways about it. And so when we cultivate that stillness within us, that acceptance within us, again, the world is twice born. In some sense, it always is. There's always the experience of that world out here and the way that we interpret it within. A friend of mine, Seth, who I actually really wonderfully bumped into in the wild just yesterday. They had a background on their phone that I adored that was a creature looking into a mirror, and the words above it just said, "The world is as you are." And so, in this ability to practice and build the stillness, we receive this still and full, beautiful world as it is. There is always beauty, and there's always love, and there's always goodness flowing in all these different ways and in all these different times. So that kind of brings us full circle through the exposition, if you will, of finding beauty in the seasons. So something that this is probably a theme I'll come back to yet again through the works of Khalil. But that aspect of living with our seasons has so much to unfold and so much to offer. And to meet those seasons with stillness, with acceptance, with non-judgment is how the beauty is unlocked in them. I think that we can I can certainly speak for myself, have a predisposition towards thinking certain ones are more beautiful and more desirable and, if you will, better than others. So, springtime, for instance, or daytime, or high tide, any of these things, we might attach a preferred state and a bias to them. And that's not inherently bad, but it can offset the ability to accept and find beauty within these different things. I believe it's John Kabat-Zinn who says that when our first thought about something is I like or I don't like this, we are collapsing ourselves. We are making smaller versions of ourselves, and these very binary self. He doesn't say that, but we create this binary self that exists in a direct dichotomy. Um, Even in Star Wars, right? There's the phrase, "Only a Sith deals in absolutes." And so we find this ability to find the beauty in all of the phases, in all of the transitions, and to navigate them without judgment. In the same way, the sun is not judged for rising and falling every day. Day is not judged for coming, nor is night. I hope that the moon is not perceived, and certainly not perceiving itself as lesser or greater for going through the phases that it goes through, waxing and waning, full and new and dark, tides for being high and low, rain for falling in the spring, leaves for falling in the autumn, snow for being with us in the winter. All of these things are simply the natural order. And they ask things of us to change, to meet them, certainly. And maybe those changes can feel uncomfortable. but they also offer more of us unto ourselves. You know, humans to arrive at this kind of space that we're at of being able to eat foods year round, of being able to travel the world, of being able to fly without being flighted beings, not having wings, basically, of being able to communicate across the world in a millisecond, in some way, shape, or form. All of this is brought about by our ability to create homes, to create houses. We are creatures that require shelter, as many are. Almost all land dwelling creatures, certainly. So the seasons and the elements have given us those opportunities to create these shelters that we call houses, or that are houses, and that we experience as homes. And within these spaces that are our own, we express ourselves yet more within this safety, within this structure. Which maybe I'll tie that in again when I record the structure episode. We have this enhanced ability for creativity in creating those energies that are around us. So we can imagine, like, even as simply as saying the music that we play and the art that we put on the walls around us, the comfort of our bed, we modify this experience that we exist in, and that is our safety, and that is our place to return to. And then the seasons continue to move and to turn, right? So we are taught a lesson by the seasons that it is important to have this space to return to. And returning this to Jane Hirschfield's poem, she says, when she speaks of the beauty, she's not, again, just speaking of things existing in stasis, even that stillness of reflecting the world not existing in stasis. She says, let me see, I want the losing it all when it rains, and I want the returning transparence, right? I want the way water sees without eyes, hears without ears, shivers without will or fear at the gentlest touch. So she is still wanting to be in the flow, even knowing that these things will be shaken up. She wants to burn and release the leaves. She is not against the experiencing of sadness or of sorrow or of disruption, but accepting it in stride and knowing that she has the stillness to return to. In some way, shape, or form, we could see that as being like the home, the house, and especially the home within ourselves that can be crafted of so many things, of so many wonderful things, all of which I'm happy that you have some of already, and am happy that you will continue to build those. I know for myself, some of them, and for you as well, some of those can be physical practices. So drinking hot tea, that's one I will consistently mention. Um, Drinking hot tea, taking a hot bath, breath work being something we can always return to, the calmness and stillness and controlling that flow and what that creates within us, maybe physical exercise. It can also be ideas, it can be memories, it can be pictures, something slightly more on the mental or stimulus plane in that sense. So just the thought, it's going to be okay. Or one that I engage with is a visual image of my higher self or larger self hugging me. And I just kind of close my eyes and take a couple breaths and feel that hug. And I'm like, that's right. It is going to be okay. And it is okay right now, right here. And then we have the even more abstract things that can help form the walls of our home. So the comfort of philosophies or ideas such as the only constant is change, or I am always worthy of love, or this too shall pass. Just these core tenets that we can build within us that can become cornerstones, guiding lights in the sky, compasses and direction, these different things that form the home and help us to return to that stillness, right? Even when the world, if you will, outside of us is experiencing this turbulence, we too can exist within that turbulence and it's okay, right? Like being hiking and it raining, and you can exist within that, and it can be a fun journey actually, because you can have that confidence of knowing you're going to arrive where you're going to arrive to, and it's going to be beautiful. In one practice of Buddhism, there is a teacher. There are four teachers, and one of the teachers is the mountain lion, who represents absolute joy and also discipline. The example of its joy and discipline are that it jumps from one mountaintop to another across a large crevice, a large space that falling down could mean death. But when making that jump, it does not experience fear. All it experiences is pure joy of knowing it's going to reach where it's going to reach, and of that exact moment of overcoming and not having to think about the fearful thing. Why? Because it has practiced discipline. And because it practices discipline, it knows what it can achieve, and it does achieve those things. So within ourselves, right, discipline is one of the highest forms of self-love. Within ourselves, we can, and I do not want to think of discipline exclusively in this disciplinarian attitude where it's harmful, but this consistency that we can engage with ourselves because we love ourselves. So with consistency, we can expose ourselves to beautiful things, to practices of stillness, to poetry, to calming activities, to good relationships and good people within our lives, right? So that way, even when we're not with the physical things necessarily that would bring us that stillness, say you can't drink that hot tea right now, you can't leave that stressful meeting or experience, you're stuck driving in the rain and it's a little uncomfortable, whatever that might be, we have engaged with those practices of goodness, of stillness, of peace within ourselves, that even as our lake ripples, we can return to that transparency by summoning that feeling, that thought, that philosophy, that love, that experience within that moment. And then the stillness comes back, even if we're not there with that other thing. And so the final lines of the poem, which might have thrown you off a little bit when I first read them, there is a person named Lalla Dead, spelled Lallad, 2 words. But in the final lines of the poem, Jane says, there is a lake, Lalla Dead sang, no larger than one seed of mustard, that all things return to. O heart, if you will not, cannot give me the lake, then give me the song. And so there we have it, right? That stillness and that small, beautiful, powerful, potent thing. We can carry that seed within us. We are that seed, and we are within that seed, and the seed is within us. But maybe we don't know how to let it germinate, how to let it bloom yet, which is very apt for this particular project, Inner Bloom Meditations. But she speaks to her heart She speaks to her emotional center, to that life, that vital life force flowing through her and creating this physical body that we heavily identify with as humans, and says, "O heart, if you will not, cannot give me the lake, then give me the song." And so what do we have? We have the beauty, we have the thought, the words, we have those things which guide us to the sacred place within. Another line, oh man, oh, that felt really good to say, that felt really good to share. Those things that guide us to the sacredness within. Those things which guide us to the sacredness within. I thank you for letting me share with you, and I hope that this project, as it unfolds, is something like that for you, that it is something that guides you to the sacredness within. I almost want to tap out right now. This just feels so good within my body. But let me share a little bit more before we wrap up. There will later on in the prophet, there will be a poem called On Houses, actually, which I didn't think of until now. But he says in it something along the lines, I'm going to paraphrase. He says, "And what do you have within your home? Things carved of wood and stone that lead you to beauty, that lead you to the holy mountain, or simply," well, and then he says these other things. But again, there are things that we can put within our life that will guide us to the holy mountain, that will guide us to the sacred space. I believe I've mentioned the holy mountain in another episode. I may not have, but I love to think of the holy mountain that is spoken of in the monotheistic texts, where the prophet Moses, I believe, climbed the mountain and spoke with God, Yahweh, Allah, Jehovah, and came down with these inscribed tablets that had commandments from God, that I believe there were 10. And so he came down radiant and glowing from that space. And this is a story that's told often, of climbing the mountain to encounter holiness and returning with something. It's also a part of the hero's journey of rising to meet a challenge and returning with a boon. And so in sitting with our seasons, in sitting with the beauty of them, and returning with something, especially creating something, be it art, a journal entry, poetry, this podcast, these recorded episodes, we can have those things to fall on later and have those reminders of that sacred place to return to, and of how that sacred place is within all things. So we bring the gift of our stillness to the world around us. We create a home and a safety within us that will allow us and empower us to meet the seasons in stride and find those beautiful things and those beautiful practices that blossom and bloom and bring beauty from those things. The one that's coming to mind for me right now is that, winter is very often the hardest season for a lot of people to find the beauty in. And in the winter, soup is really fun to engage with. Soup is delicious, and it's not as appealing in the summer. I would know. I work at a place that sells soup, and we are in slow season right now. But, soup and the experience of kind of drinking it and of drinking hot drinks, especially gathered around fire, bring to mind these ideas and these images of community and how beautiful it is to come together and have these community experiences. I know a lot of people could think of Christmas as one of those examples, a gathering where when the world is cold and we are warm and seek to experience more warmth, we gather together to share in warmth, you know? So bringing winter as maybe an analogy for our moments of sadness, I think to the movie, I can't remember the name, but it's a Pixar movie about emotions where the main character, Riley, has multiple emotions characterized within her as kind of individual people. And two of them, joy and sadness, have this push and pull throughout the film. And there's this beautiful moment where this imaginary friend named Bing Bong, who is one of my favorite characters, is dealing with difficult emotions, and joy is trying to tell him to not feel those difficult emotions and instead just be happy. And sadness comes and sits with him and just says, yeah, that's sad. And they cry together, or at least Bing Bong cries. And then through crying, moves into this next space of being able to move forward. And so he is with the season and experiences it as we are with our seasons and find the beauty of them. Halil will later say that it is so that springtime is hidden within the heart of winter. Even if you do not believe it so, the springtime will not hold that against you, or something unto those lines. And so we must dive into winter in order for spring to blossom. And we can find those beautiful things within winter in the end of that film, in the end of that animated film, whose name still escapes me. We find out that this joyous memory that's been a key part of the film, this joyful memory, it's a core memory of this character. We find out that the reason she was able to experience that deep joy that informed who she was because she experienced this deep sadness after losing a hockey game. And she went to sit alone in a tree and to be sad. And her friends and family came to her and gathered her and cheered her on. And I think, raised her up above the crowd. And it was this beautiful moment for her. That her community recognized the sadness and gathered unto her to show love to her. And it's so beautiful, and I really feel so good in my body right now just talking about all of this. So again, thank you for letting me share this. So this is kind of that full circle of being with our seasons, experiencing them in fullness and not judging them, and finding that ability to find the beauty in each of them by having our own practices that we can carry with us and that others can bring into our experience as well. I never want us to fall into the trap of thinking of ourselves as needing to be individualistic and only self-sufficient, when we are in fact communal beings. We are in fact a community. We are a family. And we can come together and should come together and offer love and feel love from one another. So I hope that this this project is something that offers you love as well, that you're feeling something offered unto you that can be, not to be too grandiose, but maybe that could be like the tablet brought down from the mountain, and these words can empower you and bring you back to the sacredness within yourself, that can bring you back to the stillness within yourself and remind you that you are sacred. You are that sacredness. You are that stillness. You are the beauty. And all of that is within the world around you, seeking to flow through you, within you, back out from you and into the world, that we can be as the tree, as the tree that Jane spoke of, that we spoke of in the last episode, that is always in the flow of giving and receiving naturally and beautifully. And we are going to be there and we are there, and I am grateful. So thank you so much for spending this time with me today. This episode was fairly lengthy. If you're still here, I'm incredibly grateful. And I'm very grateful to you for being a part of the Inner Bloom community today. I know that there may be quite a few new listeners. I've been out in the world quite a bit this last week or two. I do love Taurus season and the beauty of springtime and how it naturally brings those things forth. So to all of you who are here and who are new, welcome. Thank you for sharing your time with us. Thank you for following in this. And I do hope you receive something. If you feel as though you did receive anything, beauty, love, light, warmth, I would ask that you share this with somebody else, that light may stretch further, that this flower may bloom another petal, that this tree may grow another branch or another root, that we may continue to grow together. And if you do so, I thank you for doing so. I would love to hear your thoughts and input over this. I'm going to try to be more active on our social medias, so feel free to go check us out there. The main one I've been leaning on is Instagram, at Inner Bloom Pod, INNER Bloom POD. We're officially over 100 followers there. I had been offering some small free tarot readings, but for the first 100 people. But maybe I'll give you one for free just because. I don't know, why not? I can give you a small one if you want to DM over there. If you'd like to carry the energy of the flower with you, this golden flower that is our logo, I've designed some great merch at shop.innerbloompod.com. I think they're pretty cool if you want to check them out. And I'm working on some exclusive meditations and a full audiobook of the Prophet for our Patreon and Coffee. Anything that you offer there, I bless that tenfold, that it find its way back into your life and the universe show you its generosity and abundance. And I'm happy that you're going to receive that. But yeah, I think we have reached a full circle today, and it feels good. I know there's more I would like to share, but this feels good for today. I'm excited to share more with you next time. Thank you for sharing this poem with me and this exploration. I've been inconsistent with these drops, but my goal is to drop every Tuesday or Thursday. So hopefully we'll see you then. Otherwise, maybe we'll see you on one of the socials and hear from you there. Until then, I am manifesting all of the love and all of the light into your life. I look forward to hearing your stories. And until the next time, may you be blessed in all of your ways and all of your days. May the path be gentle and your days be full. Thank you, and thank you.